Be sure they got the tapes. There were also things they did was they would have the subject that's sitting in the chair think of a creature. And that creature would precipitate itself. They would have the subject think, there's a car coming up the road. Stop the car. The car would stop. There'd be no electrical activity in it. They would have the subject in the chair think of change the direction of the fish. And the fish would do this sort of thing. They would have the subject think all the animals on Montauk Point are going to charge into the town. There's records of that even to this day, of all animal life coming off the point charging into the town. There'd be, you talk to the local kids, now they're young adults out at Montauk, that lived out at Montauk, you'll find out there's rumors of kids hearing big things stomping around the woods on the point. That's what came out of somebody's mind, precipitated through this huge mine amplifier. They almost had the power of creation. They could almost create a being. The problem they had is the being only stayed as long as the transmitter was on. Flip the switch. The being stopped all its mobility and faded back into hyperspace. But that's how powerful this thing was. This thing, you're talking gigawatts, and the etheric power probably many, many terawatts. You're talking astronomical etheric power. Because they're using multiple pulse modulated amplifiers on top of pulse modulated amplifiers, opening different windows from the drive of this amp to that amp, and you can encode all sorts of zero-point functions as you go through what they call the amplidyne function. See, the amplidyne is essentially a zero-point amplifier. So by the time they started pulsing the 100-watt stage, by the time they got out to the half a gigawatt output, the etheric power was up in the sky. This thing was tremendous. This transmitter, it took at times 2 generators supplying a megawatt each to run this thing. They were pumping 2 megawatts into this whole building, which you'll see pictures of. But, you know, I don't think I can overstate how much power, as far as we're concerned in this room, it's astronomical power this thing had. This thing literally had, if the person who was sitting in the chair thought of a time warp and a vortex, that vortex was formed.
Excuse me, does this have any military applications that you're aware of? Silly question.
I can think of thousands.
And is that why Eastern Europe's almost free today? Because the Russians are simply scared of this? I don't know.
Who knows? There's also other thoughts that other outside groups are saying to the Earth government you straighten up or ship out. Who knows?
You said people could walk through this time vortex.
Yes, right.
Did you ever walk through the time vortex?
No comment.
Do you know anybody that did? Could you describe at least the experience or?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I did more than once, and it's weird, to say the least. The recollection is that you.
First of all, how is it formed? Just at the beginning, before it's created. What do you see before it's created?
Before it's created, you see nothing but the building or the area that you're in.
You're in a chair or
no
open space.
No. What they finally ended up doing was they took whatever Duncan or his alternates would generate, they put it on tape.
Okay.
Now, it could generate it inside the underground area. It could generate the...
From anywhere to anywhere.
Or generate it outside. It can be from any particular point where they chose to generate the origin, and it would go to the terminal point.
Where?
The terminal point would be wherever they chose it to be.
And you could be driving a car.
You probably...
I mean, what would happen if you were driving a car?
Your car would go through it.
If your car went into the entrance of it, yes, the car would go through and come out at the other end wherever it was. It could be 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 years in the future or the past.
You would actually... that other time to describe what
whatever went in the beginning, the entrance would come out the other end.
I've run computer modeling.
I'm sorry?
Could the car be spatially dislocated? Could it be somewhere else in the universe?
Sure could.
Yes.
I've run computer modeling based upon calculations of learning from the radio phones and such, and the vortex could have a diameter of 5 miles. could be a 5-mile opening, or of course they could bring it down to
Long Island.
No.
So what was it like, Al? You were saying?
It's like looking into the entrance of a peculiar spiral tunnel which was lit all the way down. You would start to walk into this thing, and then suddenly you'd be pulled down it. You would more or less be projected. You didn't walk through it as such. You were more or less propelled through it.
You walked into it.
You walked into it, correct, start. Then you were propelled down the thing like some force grabbed you and pulled you through, and you come out the other end, wherever it is. It could be far in the past, it could be in the future, it could be very close by, and it could definitely be another place, physically, other than the point where you started and usually was.
Wherever whatever point in space and time the transmitter was set to transmit to.
Emphasize space and time
Right.
because it could be anywhere in the universe.
Did you go back or forward in time?
Either way.
Were you physically there? Could you interact with other things?
Yes.
Yes.
You could take remnants back with you. You could take a like for example, if you projected yourself to go to another planet, you could bring something back with you.
Sure,
Yes,
sure.
good.
If you could live on the other planet.
Yeah, right. I can't answer that for certain, but I would say probably.
Have you ever personally brought anything back from another time, either past or future?
Yes.
Was it of terrestrial origin or?
Yes, in this case it was terrestrial origin. It was a Life magazine from the year 1983 to take it back to 1943, but that's part of the Philadelphia story.
That's still continuing the Phoenix project yet.
How did
You guys asked the question of what it was
Okay,
like.
the description of the vortex, please continue.
Yeah.
Well, the description was it was like a tunnel, coruscating corkscrew, sort of lit, sort of looked like the wall.
Vortex, please continue.
Yeah. Well, the description was it was like a tunnel, coruscating corkscrew, sort of lit, sort of looked like the walls were,
solid or moving?
they were solid, but they were fluted. It was not a solid bore through rock, as you would think. It was a fluted sort of structure. And you would go down this, and you would be propelled down this tube, as it were, this tunnel, which was not straight. It was corkscrew. And it would not go in a straight line either. It would take some very strange turns, which you could not explain. But it did take turns, and you'd come out at the other end, wherever you were supposed to come out, and meet somebody or do something at the other point. And
Did you have like a mission?
yes. Then you would return. Then when whatever you were doing was completed, the tunnel would reopen for you, and you go in the other direction. You walk back in it, go back to where you came from.
Exact reverse of what happened when you were there.
If someone switched off the power, would you be able to get back?
No.
No, you'd be lost in
You'd be
time
stuck
and
there.
space.
And they never get back.
You would not get back.
People were lost. That's
That's
what
what
I
I'm looking
thought.
at.
People were lost.
Wow.
I've heard of that.
Was anyone who went through one of these programs?
Possibly?
Possibly, we don't know of all of those people, those young kids who were programmed, what the final intent was. We only have a little glimmering of part of it now, and this is in the last week or two, and it's very incomplete. It's been a mystery to us for a long time. What was the end goal of all of these kids being programmed? What did they want to do with them? And 10,000 there and all the other stations? There had to be a reason.
Yeah.
When you said people were lost, does that mean that if the machine was turned off, instant disintegration or just abandoned in that time period?
It would depend on which happened first. In other words, if they went down the tunnel and got to their termination,
Still fine.
they were fine. And if the tunnel was turned off and they couldn't get it refocused to that area in time, and the person was lost there, they were abandoned, so to speak, and
They're
trapped in
floating
that
in
time or
hyperspace.
location. If the tunnel disintegrated while they were in transit, they were lost.
And if they
Disintegrated.
were abandoned in time,
Yeah, they could be abandoned.
and this
in
is
time.
going to be a sort of a philosophical question,
Yeah.
wouldn't they be angry and do something really wild to alter the future?
Depends on where they were abandoned.
Well, they did not abandon people in time.